because they've been talking about this stuff a lot. They don't know what they're talking about. They might mean well, but I don't think they know what they're talking about. We're going to play this.
But it's going to take a while. I
Such
hope you know,
douches.
because you're not going to be able to get people who are assigned to the UFC. You're going to have to.
Yes, I will.
I don't think you're going
Yes,
to
I
be
will.
able to. They're all going to have to join the union at once.
Yes, and we're going to raise $50 million. And the fighters who are fighting check to check, we will fund them so that they don't have to be obedient to the UFC. We will fund their salaries or their career earnings.
You are
in the meantime
wild, brother.
We will fund their.
You're coming for his neck, his whole organization.
These guys have no idea what they're talking about. It sounds nice. It sounds good. We're going to fund them. They're not employees. Okay. They have no leverage. It does not matter if you have this much money. You could raise $500 million. It won't matter. They still have no leverage. They are independent contractors. As independent contractors, they sign a promotional agreement. Okay. They'll sign a 5-fight deal or 8 fights in 5 years. You know, there's a sunset clause that says after 5 years, their contract is terminated, but it starts at the first fight. So you sign the promotional agreement. Nothing happens until you get a bout agreement. The contract doesn't even start until you get a bout agreement. Once you have the bout agreement, you sign the bout agreement. You're specifically saying, I signed this contract saying I will fight this person on this day for this much money. Your sunset clause doesn't start until the fight happens. If you sign that bout agreement and you pull out and you don't get a fight, like because you're going to strike, well, your fights don't start. Your sunset clause doesn't kick in yet because you didn't fight yet. Also, if you sign a bout agreement, you're signing a contract saying I will fight on this day at this time versus this person. If you pull out and say, I'm striking because you didn't give us what we wanted in our collective bargaining agreement, you get sued. You get sued. You broke your contract. You broke your deal. You can't do that. You can't do that. And on top of that, if they create a union within the UFC, if you lose a fight under your promotional agreement, you're allowed to be fired. That's all it takes is one loss. You get one loss, right? I was 14-3-1 in the UFC. I was ranked number 9. I lost one fight, a slow decision to Damian Maia, and that was enough to cut me. All you need to do is lose. So all they have to do is anybody who isn't towing the line and saying what they want and asking for the things that they want and they approve, they just got to give them the worst fight possible, give them the worst matchup possible, put them on the undercard, give them the worst flight, worst hotel room, the worst times to do his interviews, sick USADA on them, and have them tested like they're doing with what's his name, where they test him like 40 times in a month or some shit. They test him like every day of the month, pretty much. The guy who's fighting Glover coming up. They can just make it miserable for you to win. And then you lose that fight and now you're fired. You think the other fighters are going to have the balls to stand up and do the right thing? Or are they going to think like, oh man, that could happen to me. The same thing could happen to me. Which one do you think is going to happen? They have zero leverage. Fighters have zero leverage. Without the Ali Act, without the lawsuit, there is no leverage. You cannot do shit with this union. It doesn't matter if you have $50 million. It doesn't matter if you have 100, 200, $500 million. Does not matter. Either Jake Paul is doing all this just for clout or he's not smart enough to understand how things work. And he's too proud to reach out across the table and actually talk to people who've been in the mix and know what the frick's going on. Mixed Martial Arts Fighters Association has been dealing with this type of crap for more than a decade. We've gotten more done than anybody else. Nobody's come close to doing as much as we have as far as moving the sport forward. The only reason Francis Ngannou is able to do what he's doing right now is because the sunset clause that is there because of us, is because of the fighters who filed the class action lawsuit. Mixed Martial Arts Fighters Association exists. We have an organizing committee. But guys are scared. They're terrified to sign up and be a part of it. And then they start talking about healthcare. If you have free agency and you're making market value, you don't need healthcare that's provided by somebody else. You can afford your own. You can afford your own. Now, of course, that is a goal for Fighters Association to be able to have some form of health insurance, to have some type of post-career plans. Boxing has a pension. Boxing has a pension in California. It has never been used. It's never been used. You know why? Because the guys who make enough money to pay into the pension don't need it. The guys who don't make enough money to pay into the pension, they quit early and go do something else, and they don't need it. I'm sorry. association is needed, but the idea, a union this, union that, they don't know what they're talking about. And then the purpose of the association is to create standards across the board throughout the entire industry. And the way to do that is to have the Ali Act enacted, so we have a backstop. We have a legal baseline. So we know if promoters break the rules for that legal baseline, the association can sue them, can take legal action against them. That's where boxers have failed. That's why there's a struggle and there's a lot of messes in boxing right now, is because they don't have an association. They don't have somebody to enforce the Ali Act. Now, boxing, people say it's dead, but it's increased in revenue ever since the Ali Act. It hasn't slowed down. It's only increased. It has more revenue now than it did adjusted for inflation. Let me see if I have some kind of numbers here. I think I have something. I got to look for my message from John Nash, because John Nash is the guy who's spent the time looking at the numbers. So first, let's look at this. Let's look at this. I'm going to show you, oh, boxing's dead. This is why MMA is better. Okay, then why? Why is this? Here you go. There's the payouts, right? This is boxing in red, MMA in blue. Boxing makes more money at every level, except that one little level right here. Right in here, this area right here is that low level of UFC that gets thrown off. It gets thrown off right here because of the 10 and 10. 10 and 10, because you have guys who are 1-0, 2-0, 5-0, making 10 and 10. That doesn't happen in boxing, because you have to win a bunch of times before you start getting paid something. You have to earn your place. UFC pays that 10 and 10 because it throws people off their scent. And look at how much they're stealing from the top end. They're stealing ridiculous amounts of money from the guys at the top. On top of that, let's look at revenue. Boxing saw total gross revenues of $240 million in 1998. That's 2 years before the Ali Act took effect. And that's about $435 million today. So boxing was making about $435 million gross revenue. That's all the events, all the boxing, everything in totality was $435 million. They grossed that much. Boxing grossed that much in pay-per-view alone last year. Just in pay-per-view, boxing did that. So boxing's making way more money. HBO and Showtime boxing budgets were about $120 million combined back then, or $220 million today. The combined budgets for DAZN, ESPN, and Showtime together are much higher today. So boxing's making more money than it ever has before. How is it dying? How does that constitute death? They're doing better than they ever have before financially. And we can't even look at what the viewership is. The viewership is behind so many different walls: HBO, Showtime, DAZN, ESPN, all these different things that we can't get accurate readings of viewership. So we're not really sure of how many people are watching, but they're making way more money. Boxing's making more money. Boxers make more money on every level. Boxing is making more money than it ever has. It's more successful than it was than before the Ali Act. The Ali Act has made it possible for boxing to make more money than it ever has. How's it dead? Please explain this to me. That's such a stupid comment. I know that you have never done any research. You have not talked to anybody that has any idea what they're talking about if you say that. This is something that John Nash has tweeted that I like a lot. He says, boxing is dying like Major League Baseball is dying. He says, less popular with the general public than it was in its heyday, when it was one of three major sports and few rivals for attention. But like baseball, the business keeps seeing revenues increase above inflation, barring pandemics. That was in the quotes. Sorry, anybody telling you that boxing is not good, boxing's dead, they're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. If you look at the numbers, if you look at the facts, you're wrong. Just because it's your opinion, because you have feelings about it, doesn't make it true. You're wrong. Sorry, dummy. You're stupid. You're a stupid person. You can't count. You don't know math. You don't make that much more money and still say something's dead. Dumb. Topher's correct here. Topher says boxing's dead because Uncle Dana and Joe Rogan say so. Where's your proof? Well, we never see the best. Bullshit. We never see the best fight. We saw Tyson Fury and the big tall guy fight. We saw Joshua and what's his name fight. We've been seeing great fights. There was a fight that fell apart recently. The Earl Spence and whatever fell apart. It fell apart because one of the guys wanted more money. He didn't like the deal they offered him. Oh my God. What a monster. What a monster. He didn't want to risk his life and brain cells for less money than he wanted. What a horrible person. Boxing's dead. I don't know, man. It's like fight fans want slaves. You really want slaves. You just want slaves to go out and do my bidding. Do my bidding. Go fight him for no money, get brain damage. And then I'll throw you away in a home and never care about you ever again. Pathetic. You people are pathetic. It's gross. It's gross. I'm grossed out.